All right, let's talk about a movie that really gets in your head. It's a film that poses a pretty uncomfortable question. If you could completely change your face, would you still be you? We are diving deep into A24's 2024 film, A Different Man. And believe me, this psychological dark comedy is one that has critics raving, has sparked some wild online debates, and is just crying out for a closer look. So right off the bat, the critical consensus tells you everything you need to know. This is not your average feel-good movie. Surreal and unsettling are probably the two best words to describe it. It's the kind of film that's designed to get under your skin, to make you second-guess what you're seeing, and, force you to think about some pretty heavy stuff when it comes to identity. And really, this is the question at the absolute heart of the story. It seems simple on the surface, but the places this movie goes with it are incredibly complex and, yeah, pretty uncomfortable. The film has the guts to ask, is the face we show the world really the source of all our problems? Or is the real issue buried somewhere much, much deeper inside? Okay, so to really get what this film is all about, you've got to understand the basic setup. And trust me, it's a tricky one to pin down. It's kind of a dark comedy, kind of a psychological thriller, kind of a deep character study, all rolled into one really unforgettable package. The whole story revolves around a character named Edward, who's played just brilliantly by Sebastian Stan. Edward has a real-world genetic condition called neurofibromatosis, and this is so key. It's not just some random plot device. It is the foundation of who he is. It has shaped literally every single interaction in his life, and it's why he's living this quiet, pretty isolated existence. So, starting from that premise, the story just takes this incredibly sharp and unexpected turn. Edward finds himself on a journey that is, well, it's both a dream come true and, as he finds out pretty quickly, an absolute nightmare. Let's just walk through this transformation, because every step is just wilder than the last. So first, you meet Edward, an actor who feels totally trapped by his condition, like he's in a prison made of his own flesh. Then, boom, he gets a shot at a new life. A radical procedure gives him a conventionally handsome face. But here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of just moving on, he fakes his own death and creates this entirely new person, Guy. He cuts off everything from his past. And then the final ironic twist, his neighbor writes a play about the dead Edward, and he ends up auditioning to play his former self. I mean, can you imagine? He has to literally put on a mask of his old face to pretend to be the person he used to be. It's just a bizarre, captivating setup. So just when you think you have a handle on where this crazy story is going, it gets way more complicated. Edward, who's now living his new life as Guy, thinks he's left the past behind, but his whole new reality gets completely shattered when a new character shows up. And this guy is like a walking, talking mirror of everything Edward tried to run away from. Yup, a new man arrives to play the part of the old man. His name is Oswald, and he's played by the amazing Adam Pearson, who, in real life, also has neurofibromatosis. This casting is absolutely crucial. Oswald walks into the theater, he's interested in the play about Edward, and the second he's on screen, the entire dynamic of the movie just shifts on a dime. And this comparison just lays the whole conflict bare. On one side, you've got Guy. He has the perfect face he always dreamed of, but inside, he's still the same anxious, insecure person he's always been. All his new confidence is built on a lie, like a house of cards. Then you've got Oswald. He's living with the exact same condition that Edward was so desperate to escape, but he's charming, he's confident, he's successful, he's everything Edward ever wanted to be without changing a thing. Oswald's very existence becomes this constant torment for Edward, because he's living proof that maybe, just maybe, the face was never the real problem. Now, a story this bold and this provocative, it definitely didn't go unnoticed. Before we get into unpacking the film's biggest mysteries, it's worth taking a second to see the huge splash it made with both critics and award shows. I mean, just look at this, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. And that's based on 178 critic reviews. We're talking certified fresh, overwhelmingly positive stuff here. Critics were just blown away by its daring script and, maybe most of all, the incredible performances from the cast. And it wasn't just good reviews. The film backed it up with some serious hardware. Sebastian Stan took home the Silver Bear for Best Leading Performance at the Berlin Film Festival and a Golden Globe. The movie itself even snagged Best Feature at the Gotham Awards. So yeah, this wasn't just some niche cult film. This was a recognized, celebrated piece of cinema. Okay, so now we get to the really fascinating part. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. the ending leaves you with way more questions than answers. It has sparked some truly intense debates online, so let's try to make sense of the biggest theories. This is it. This is the big one that dominates every single Reddit thread and discussion about the movie. In that final scene, years after Edward's been in prison, Oswald calls him by his real name. But was that a new discovery? Or did they know who he was the entire time? Okay, so let's break down the theories, because they're all pretty compelling. Theory 1 is the simplest. His real identity as Edward came out during his arrest and trial. Clean, simple. But maybe a little too simple for this movie. Theory 2 is that Oswald knew from day one. I mean, it makes sense. The community of actors with disfigurements is small. And that one line he drops, "You're only Edward on the telly?" Whoa. Suddenly, that sounds less like a question and more like a clever, knowing jab, doesn't it? And then there's Ingrid. Oh man, that incredibly uncomfortable scene where she asks Guy to wear the Edward mask. A lot of people see that as a totally calculated move, a psychological test to see if he would finally crack and just admit who he really was. But the mystery goes even deeper. A lot of fans are asking, was that final dinner scene even real? Think about it. After Edward attacks Oswald, kills his therapist, and serves years in prison, we suddenly see him having this pleasant dinner with Ingrid and Oswald? It just feels completely wrong. So on one side, you have people saying, no way. This has to be a hallucination. And you can see why. Why on earth would they ever forgive him for what he did? It feels way too convenient. But on the other hand, just writing it off as it was all a dream kind of feels like a cop-out for a film this smart. It operates on a symbolic level, not a strictly realistic one. And that final shot where their laughs just blend into one, that suggests something more metaphorical is happening, that these two men, their identities, have become blurred together. And it all comes crashing down to this single, devastating line. Edward's at the table, nervously struggling to pick something off the menu, just like the old Edward would have, and Oswald looks right at him and says, "You haven't changed a bit." That's the punchline to the whole film's cruel joke. It confirms that after all of it, the surgery, the new identity, faking his death, the insecure, essential Edward is still right there under the surface. So when you strip away all the bizarre, surreal parts of the story, what are you left with? The film uses this crazy journey to get at something deeply, universally human. It's not really about one man's face, it's about all of our insecurities. The big takeaway seems to be that the real prison was never Edward's skin. It was his own mind, his own lack of confidence. Oswald is the ultimate proof of this, right? He has the charisma and authenticity that Edward never had. And because of that, he thrives. Edward got the face he always wanted, but he could never escape himself. It proves that any real transformation has to start from the inside. And that's what the film leaves us with. It turns the mirror back on us. It asks you, personally, if you could change the one thing you think is holding you back, would you really become a different person? Or, like Edward, would you discover that, deep down, you haven't changed a bit? Thanks for joining us for this explainer.